Gear is expensive, very expensive, and today we're going to find out just how expensive having all of the best gear in the game is and whether it's more than a party hat. Some of these things that I'm going to be mentioning are a little ridiculous and provide such a marginal increase in cost, but it's best in slot, so we're going for it. I am going to set a ground rule for this that we're doing things that regular elite PVMers would do. So as an example, it would be technically best in slot to have all your mage switches on dyed Staff of Armadilles, but no one is going to do that. So we just use T92 offhands instead. Let's get into it. Let's start with the unlockable abilities. There are a total of 19 purchasable abilities and they all have their use. Double Surge and Double Escape cost about 30 mil each and provide a lot of the mobility in bossing encounters. Definitely something you want to have. Corruption Shot and Corruption Blast help make mage and range viable in the early game, while the other two Mazkep codexes are niche late game abilities. Each one of those four cost 41 mil, so 160 mil in total. Divert and Reprisal are another two very niche defensive abilities. Divert is a separate resonance that gives you adrenaline instead of HP. I really like using it at Jads during Zuck for a free 50% adrenaline gain. While Reprisal is an ability that reflects damage taken back to the boss, and only use case I have for it is at Virago for the team split mechanic. Next up we have the 5 former Sigil abilities. They were originally released as the new Sigil slot, but with them being a charge-based item they saw little use as they were pretty costly to use. Now that they are permanent and can be used as abilities, they see a lot more use in the meta. Limitless gives you the ability to use thresholds under 50% adrenaline, and its power is shown in its cost at 474 mil GP. Ingenuity of the Humans gives 100% hit chance on your next hit. This is very useful for off-styling certain special attacks, whether it be a SEREN GODBOW, the new Zek Sword, or a Stadius Warhammer special attack. Next up are the 3 Slayer Sigils. They give 15% more damage for the next 10 seconds when fighting the respective type, either Demon, Undead, or Dragon. As there are both Undead and Dragon boss monsters, they are definitely a must-have. Currently there is no demon boss, but there are a lot of Slayer tasks where you can take advantage of the demon damage, and who knows, they might release a demon boss in the future. There are all the minor ability upgrades, but there are 6 left, and these are the big boy ones. They are the ones that revolutionize the style that you're using. For Mage, we have Greater Chain and Magma Tempest, both of which help to deal a ton of AoE damage and stack up more critical hits. For range, we have only one with Greater Ricochet. This specializes the style as a multi-hit style, with it having a ton of small hits that can proc on-hit effects like Poison, Bacriminal Bolts, and Soul Split. For melee, there are 3 greater abilities from the Dragonkin Laboratory: Fury, Flurry, and Bard. Greater Fury is a basic ability. When unlocked, it changes it to a single hit of 157% damage, and if you crit, your next hit is guaranteed to crit. Not a big increase, as you can just cancel regular Flurry after 2 ticks, but it makes Greater Fury very Revolution friendly. Greater Flurry is a threshold. It increases the damage to make it viable to use in single target DPS, and as a secondary effect that each hit of Flurry reduces the Berserk cooldown by 1.2 seconds. Zerking every 50 seconds instead of every 60 seconds can be a big increase to DPS. Greater Barge is a basic ability, and it's the solution to melee being unable to attack for certain boss mechanics. If you haven't been attacking for 5 seconds, you're able to bleed one of the channeled abilities, such as Assault, Destroy, or Flurry, to make up the DPS that was lost dealing with the mechanic. Okay, that's all 19 abilities. The first 13 cost 1.1 bill, and the last 6 cost 4.6 bill, bringing our total so far at this point to 5.7 bill. While we're on the topic of non-gear, let's look at the Praezel codexes. There are better versions of the Turmoil Prayer, and one is needed for each style. Each one costs 894 mil, giving a total cost of just shy of 2.7 bill. The reason why these are continually so expensive is that they are pretty much unpower creepable. They could release new weapons, new gear, new abilities, and these prayers will always be relevant. Really, the only way they won't be good in the future is if they release further more powerful prayers, which I doubt, as these are level 99 already. Think of it as a permanent 2% damage and 2% accuracy to your character. Without touching any actual gear, we have spent 8.36 bill. Okay, that's enough non-gear. Let's get some gear in here and start with the glove slots. There are 6 best in slot gloves depending on what you're doing. 2 hybrid gloves, 1 for each style, and Mage gets that bonus extra glove with Crypt Bloom. Cinderbane gloves are the poison gloves. They provide a ton of extra poison damage, and whenever they work, they are immediately best in slot. The Mage gloves are the enhanced Carapax wrist wraps, which is a cool interaction with Combust and Dragon's Breath, making your Combust hit immediately and for more damage. The range gloves are the enhanced Nightmare Gauntlets, which buffs the snipe ability, giving it a plus 25% hit chance and allowing you to move while charging the ability. This is key at any high defense boss like Virago, as you'll hit much more often with snipe. The melee gloves are the enhanced Gloves of Passage. This buffs your next attack by 10% and makes the target take 20% more damage from bleeds for the next 10 seconds. Crypt Bloom gloves are tank gloves, and they are used when you want the 4-piece set effect and the target is non-poisonable, and that way you can keep the DPS boots on. We're going to talk about those boots in the next section. If you are unable to properly take advantage of any of the 5 of these effects, then the backup is the Death Touch Bracelet, which has really high stats and reflects damage taken back to the target. Boots are a little bit easier to get through as there are only 4. The style-specific boots are good enough that you will never want to wear hybrid boots. As with gloves, Mage gets a second pair. The Mage boots are enhanced Blast Diffusion boots, which cuts the charge time of Detonate in half. Now takes 3 ticks to get to 80% charge, or 4 ticks to get to 100% charge, both of which are viable in DPS rotations. Without the boots, you only use it during non-attacking periods where you could charge for free. The range boots are enhanced Fleeting boots, which gives Rapid Fire a plus 10% hit chance, and also gives you the ability to move around while casting it. The melee boots are enhanced Laceration boots, which gives you the ability to use Bladed Dive with any melee weapon equipped and not needing to dual wield. This doesn't have a major impact on PVM except for Raksha with the Shadow Pools and Scythe, but it's just a big quality of life for the melee combat style, so you never catch me not using it with melee. The boots themselves are cheap, but upgrading them to enhance costs over 200 mil, with the Shadow Spike being a minor upgrade. This is a very late game item, but hey, it's still best in slot. Crypt Bloom boots are rarely used as there aren't many scenarios where you want 4-piece Crypt Bloom, and it's worth giving up the Blast Diffusion boots for its effect, but it's still worth owning in case you need 5-piece for something. You will also need to buy the Trim Masterwork gloves and boots to get custom fit Trim Masterwork, but you'll almost never use them in actual PVM and they'll just sit in your bank at 100% charge. Next up is the ring slot. We have a total of 6 rings in here, with 3 hybrid rings being the main rings you will use. The Ring of Death is the de facto ring you're going to use most places. Death costs are still too high, and with Onyx's being at near alch price, each death is under 400k. It still has good stats, but it's just not the best ring. Reaver's Ring is that best ring. When you have 100% accuracy after the accuracy penalty, it's by far the best ring. The 5% crit chance is about 3% extra DPS, and it also has higher base stats than the Ring of Death, if you can stomach the death cost. When you need synergies with crits, like with melee, magic, or range for Tsunami, Meteor Strike, or Incendiary Shot, Reaver's Ring gets that much better than just the 3%. Luck of the Dwarves can be used as a switch at the end of kills to help improve your loot. The effect is minimal except for places where the drop rate is super low, like Araxor. There it goes from 1 in 40 to 1 in 39 for a leg piece, so you're getting a 2.5% increase in drop rate. The other 3 Matriarch rings are the other ones in this gear setup. They see a lot less use currently as the Ring of Death death cost is just too low in comparison. Channeler's Ring gives you more crits for channeled abilities, but Reaver's is generally better to camp if you're choosing one. It's only really worth it as a switch for Greater Conk or Asphyxiate. The Champion's Ring sees little use, but as bleeds come more into the meta, we could see it be used when the accuracy cost of Reaver's Ring is too high. It gives you 3% critical chance while the target is under the effect of a bleed, which for melee seems to be all the time now. The last ring is the Stalker's Ring, and this is just an in-case purchase. It provides 3% more critical chance when using bows. If bows get more back into the meta, it can easily become the ring that people use for range, but for now it's just a switch when using a bow for niche things. Let's move on to the pocket slot. This slot is for books that give a buff to your character. There are a total of 4 in the meta at the moment, with the Elder Godware Scripture being very good and very cheap to use. It has pushed a lot of the older pocket slot items out of the meta. The best one is the Aerithor's Grimoire. It gives a plus 12% critical hit chance and increases the base hit cap on critical hits to 15,000 pretty much everywhere, this is going to be your best pocket slot item to use. But on the other hand, its cost is the biggest pull away at approximately 3 mil per page. You're looking at 4 mil an hour to use this book. The next best one is the full book. When it activates, you get 20% extra damage for 15 seconds, but you also take 10% extra damage yourself. Assuming you get 40 to 50% uptime on the effect, it deals more base damage than the Grimoire does, so whenever you don't need synergies with critical hits or the increased hit cap, full is actually the best in slot book and much cheaper. The other Elder God War book that we can use is the Scripture of Wen. It gives you a big area of effect beam that is useful on Slayer and other AoE activities. Falls behind the other books on the pecking order though for single target DPS. The only original God book that is still used is the Armadel's Book of Law. It's only used at Nex because it has a lot of small hits quickly that can get around Nex's and the minions hit cap. The ammo slot is the smallest slot as we only have 2 items here, one for mage and one for range, which kind of makes sense because you don't need ammo for melee. The mage item is a grasping rune pouch. You'll need a total of 3 of them to store all 12 combat runes. The pouch that you have equipped gives a 25% chance to save runes when using combat spells, so save those water runes. The range item is the newly released Pernix Quiver. It still costs over 400 mil at this point, but it should come down with time. It allows you to swap between the 2 ammos that are stored in it with a simple keybind press and gives you plus 4% more maximum damage when the target is below 25% HP. This works out to an increase of about 0.5% to our DPS over an entire kill on average. Helms are the next slot we were looking at, and lucky for us, there are only 4 to talk about. You'll notice a theme with the rest of the armor slot. Mage has 2 helms as we want both Elite Tectonic and Cripploom, one for tanking and one for DPSing. For range, we want the Elite Serenic helm and melee Atrium Masterwork helm. There isn't too much special to talk about here with helms, it's just the best stats for each style. Now let's get into the fun part of this, the top and leg armor. We need to both buy the item and also augment it with best in slot perks, so we're getting double hit with cost. For mage, we have Elite Tectonic and Cripploom. For range, we have Elite Serenic, and melee, we have Trimmed Masterwork. The perks vary slightly for each style. On both ranged and mage, we have Biting 4 plus Mobile, Crackling 4, Relentless 5, Impatient 4 plus Devoted 4, and Invigorating 4 plus any sort of combo you want. That combo can be anything you want. If you're fighting a lot of dragons, put on Dragon Slayer. If you're doing Slayer, Genocidal. The slot will vary based on what content you're mainly doing. And Invigorating is cheap enough that you can swap between 3 or 4 different gizmos there. On melee, you want to dump the mobile perk as you want to gain adrenaline from Barge most of the time. That gives you Biting 4 plus X, Crackling 4, Relentless 5, Impatient 4 plus Devoted 4, and Enhanced Devoted 4. Again, make that X whatever suits you best with whatever you're doing. There are also 2 leg swaps that people use, one for mage and one for melee. For mage, we have a regular Tectonic legs for Telos. The perks on these legs are Turtling 4 and Clear-Headed 4. Clear-Headed 4 gives you a longer Anticipate for the red golems, stopping them from stunning you, and Turtling 4 on the legs lets you have a DPS perk on your defender. For melee, they also have a pair of Malevolent legs with Mobile on that you swap to whenever you want to get the quicker cooldown for Barge, giving you the option of Adrenaline or a quicker cooldown. Well, this was a big increase to our total cost. From just the legs and bottoms, we added 4.1 bill to the total, bringing us up to 16.3 bill. Now we have one more slot to go to before we finally get to weapons, the necklace slot. This is now dominated by the Essence of Finality as it's by far the best item for this slot. There are a total of 8 EOFs required for best in slot gear, 2 from mage, 3 from ranged, and 3 from melee. For mage, we have the Armadyl Battle Staff, not to be confused with the Staff of Armadyl. Including the EOF cost in this one, it costs about 660 mil. It's primarily used with the Staff of Armadyl special attack as it provides 5 very quick hits. Each one can crit and trigger a 2-handed auto attack, making its total damage much higher than it appears. There's also the Gothic Staff EOF, which is very valuable when you don't have the Staff of Armadyl spec up as your Adren dump ability, because you're going to have a lot of excess Adren with Mage. For range, we have the SEREN GODBOW Essence of Finality. This allows to use the SGB special attack with Criminal Bolts, giving it more average damage. Then we have the Darkbow EOF, which is the Adren dump for range, providing a ton of damage when you are swimming in extra adrenaline. And last but certainly not least, we have the Eldritch Crossbow Essence of Finality. This allows you to use the Eldritch Crossbow special attack with dual wield equipped, giving access to Needle Strike and swapping your offhand Blightbound. For melee, we have Dragon Claws EOF to start. This has mostly been replaced by the Overpower ability once you have the melee Zut Cape, but there are some niche places where Claws are better than Overpower, or you run into potential cooldown issues. The Statties Warhammer might be the most important EOF of all, as it allows you to lower the defense of your target by an insane amount. Plus, when you combo it with the Ingenuity of the Human's ability codex, you can use it with every style. Again, we're saving the most expensive for last. The HEXHUNTER'S needs to be thrown in an EOF. It's kind of sad that a new item goes directly into an EOF, but it has to be done. By using it with the T92 Masterwork Spear, the bleeds get extended by 3 extra hits. This makes the bleed that much more powerful as each hit does more and more damage. The total cost of all the essences, the 8 ornament kits, and all the items to throw into them is 12 bill GP, bringing her total up to 28 bill. We're getting kind of close to that party hat, and we haven't even looked at weapons yet. Speaking of weapons, I think we're ready. Let's finally start talking about weapons. We're going to do this category by category, as there are a total of 28 weapons to go through across the 3 styles. For the first category, we're going to go with main weapons. They're your camp weapons, and it consists of the best in slot weapons for both dual wield and 2-hand for all 3 styles. You'll want both dual wield and 2-hand for each style, as they each provide different abilities, and sometimes you need both. That gives us the Staff of Armadyl, Wand of the Appraisal, and Imperium Core for mage, the Eldritch Crossbow, main hand Blightbound Crossbow, and offhand Blightbound Crossbow for range. And then for melee, we have the HEXHUNTE'S, the Dark Shard of Leng, and the Dark Sliver of Leng for melee. Yes, we have another ECB and HEXHUNTE'S sword, despite having them thrown them both in an EOF. They have their uses outside. Perks-wise, it's still very standard. 2-hand has Precise 6 Ruthless 1 and Aftershock 4 Equilibrium 2. Main hand has Precise 6 Aftershock 1. This is to maintain Aftershock stacks while swapping offhands, while the main base offhand has Aftershock 4 Equilibrium 2. With perks and weapons, this is going to run you 21.6 bill. Holy crap, we're up to 50 bill total. We're not done there yet. We have a boatload of switches to go through, and first up is flanking. This gives you more damage if you are behind the target for your stun abilities. This is big at group bosses. It's relatively standard to downgrade a tier for switches, so say for my flanking switch, I would use a T90 Seismic Singularity because it's the next highest tier. But to get around that, people die their highest tier offhands, so for flanking that would be a Barrows Dyed Imperium Core, offhand Blightbound, and Dark Sliver of Leng. On top of that, the flanking 4 Equilibrium 2 gizmo is slightly more damage than a base flanking 4 gizmo. It's really small. I don't consider it worth going for it due to the 500 mil price tag per gizmo, but if you're going after best in slot, it's definitely something you need. The flanking perk alone sets you back another 6 bill. Lunging is a much more niche switch. It's almost never seen for range, barely used for mage, and heavily used for melee. Lunging gives you more damage to Combust, Fragmentation Shot, and Dismember, though the double damage for walking it no longer exists for Combust and Frag Shot. With Mage, we're going back to Diescape and dyeing another Imperium Core. This time it has to be Shadow, as we already used Barrows for flanking. Lunging is used for Mage because of the 2 synergies with Rack and Rune and the Karapek Wrist Wraps. Rack and Rune adds 2 hits to Combust, making it 7 total, while the Wrist Wraps make Combust deal 25% more damage and hit instantly, making it possible to use it at group encounters where you can't move the boss reliably. For melee, it's placed on a Masterwork Spear of Annihilation, as that weapon has a special effect where all bleeds last 50% longer. This makes Dismember hit a total of 10 times when you have the Strength Cape as well. Pair in the bonus damage for lunging, and you're getting up to 10k damage from one basic without any damage boost. As the spear is a 2-handed weapon, it also needs to have Precise 6 Aftershock 1 gizmo on it to maintain Aftershock stacks when swapping to it. As mentioned earlier, you'll also want to use the spear for Blood Tendrils, Slaughter, and the HEXHUNTE'S special attack. Chroming is a switch that is vital for range, but kind of niche for mage. Chroming increases the targets that can be hit by greater ricochet and chain by 1 per rank, meaning a chroming 4 gizmo will hit up to 7 targets. Greater ricochet deals damage to the main target for every target that is missed, so if you have chroming 4 and there is only 1 target, the main target will get hit by all 7 hits. This is very important for the range style specifically, as it can bolt proc effects 7 times. The main meta play is to swap to chroming for greater ricochet, and then you go back to your main Blightbound, which has Aftershock 4 on it, for all other abilities. This is where the Shadow Dyed Blightbound comes into play that didn't for the lunging switch. Greater Chain works slightly differently in the fact that it gives bonus damage on your next ability for each target hit. So if you hit 7 targets, all 7 targets will take damage on your next ability, though at a 50% reduction. This is great for AoE clearing out mobs, as you can Greater Chain into Omni Power. We're going to be using the Staff of Sliske as our chroming swap, as it's not as big a deal for Mage, and it's not worth getting another dyed Imperium Core or a dyed Staff of Armadillo. We can lose the 2 tiers of damage, but because it's a 2-handed weapon, you're going to want to have Precise 6 Aftershock 1 on it to maintain Aftershock stacks when swapping. The Hexhunter weapons are not that useful now that T95 weapons have come out, but they still have potential to be better. The gap is just that much smaller. With Inquisitors being 1.4% DPS better than a Staff of Armadillo when you have 100% accuracy, it's technically best in slot, but small enough that most people won't bother swapping. For range, the Hexhunter bow uses arrows, so at the moment it has little use, and the Pterosaur Maw has a similar problem to the Inquisitors in that the T95 weapon are close enough damage that people don't bother. The perks that go on these weapons are the same as the base 2-handed, so Precise 6, Ruthless 1, and Aftershock 4, Equilibrium 2. Getting these hex weapons and the perks will only set you back 1.5 bill, so it's not a bad launching off point for before you get a T95 weapon, but once you get a T95 weapon, these see a lot less use. Defenders are a cool concept, and we can take advantage of the fact that they count as both an offensive weapon and a shield. For range and mage, we're going to be using the T80 Defenders as a Planted Feet switch. Planted Feet extends the duration of Sunshine and Death Swiftness by 7 seconds, making it 37 seconds long. By placing it on a defender, we can save an inventory spot, as we no longer need to bring a shield with us. Any potential need for a shield can be used with the T80 Defender. The T90 Defender, on the other hand, are our DPS defenders. In situations where we need to camp a shield but still want to do damage, think of the very end of hard mode Carapac, these can provide a ton of value. There's a DPS loss, but using the shield ability Revenge can make up for that loss, as each stack will increase your maximum hit. The T90 Defenders cost an offhand T90 to make, so they are kind of expensive. I prefer to have Equilibrium 4 and Ruthless 3 on the Defender over Aftershock 4 Equilibrium 2, but both work. The total cost for all the Defenders is 837 mil. Now we kind of have the no category weapons. These don't really fit into any of the other categories. First up, we have the SEREN Godbow. You want a second SEREN Godbow outside of an EOF. This is for 2 main reasons. First, applying Blackstone arrow stacks. T92 is the highest level bow, so it's the most likely to hit and apply the arrow effects to high defense targets to help lower their armor rating. Usually 1 greater ricochet is enough. Secondly, when inventory space is tight and you're off styling, so you're using mage or melee, you can bring an SGB to use the special attack instead of inside an EOF. This saves 2 slots, as otherwise you'd be bringing an ECB, the EOF, and a bolts to the fight. The Zeros Godsword is still important as a spec weapon. The Black Hole special attack is still worth using whenever you need to split the damage across multiple targets. As you won't be doing any offensive abilities with it, the perks really don't matter, but having at least some level of Aftershock on it is good to maintain stack. The Noxious Scythe is the best AoE weapon. For melee, when meleeers need the extra range, they use it, as it has a range of 2 versus pretty much all other melee weapons have a range of 1. Perks wise, you want to get Equilibrium 4 plus Ruthless 3 and Aftershock 4 plus Precise 2, as those are the best AoE perks out there. And it can double as your main Slayer weapon. Last but also kind of least, we have shields. You're going to want 2 shields per style. One is a Spirit Shield designed for tanking large hits, and the other is a T90 shield for using defensive abilities at scale for heavy tanking, like when you need to use Barricade or need 100% resonance. The Spirit Shield will have Lucky 6 Absorptive 1 on it, and the T90 shield will have Turtling 4 on it. For Mage, we have Merciless and Arcane. For range, we have Vengeful and Elysian. And for melee, we have Malevolent and Divine. Well, that's it. We've got into the end and we have 69 bill in total gear. Kind of insane when you think about it. That's way more than a yellow party hat, even more than a green or a red too. It just shows how much GP is out there and how much you can make to get all this gear. I hope you enjoyed this exploration into just how much max gear costs. These type of videos do take a long time to create and research, so if you drop a like down below, that would be greatly appreciated. But past that, have a good day and I'll catch you in the next one.